Hey, stop right there. Before you lace up those walking shoes and head out the door on an empty stomach, you need to hear what I'm about to tell you. Because what most people over 50 believe about morning walks and belly fat is not just wrong, it's actually working against them. And I say that as someone who has spent over 2 decades studying how the human body ages, burns fat, and rebuilds itself. What you're about to learn in the next few minutes could completely change the way you approach your morning routine. And more importantly, it could finally give you results you've been chasing for years. Here's the truth that nobody in the mainstream fitness world wants to talk about. A landmark study published by the University of Bath in 2022 followed 30 men and women over the age of 52 who walked for 60 minutes every single morning. Half walked after eating breakfast. Half walked on a completely empty stomach. After 6 weeks, the fasted walkers burned 70% more fat from their fat stores. Not from the food they had just eaten, but from actual stored body fat, including visceral fat. The dangerous kind that wraps around your organs and drives up your risk of heart disease, diabetes, and early death. 70% more fat burned. Same walk, same time, same distance. The only difference was whether or not they had eaten first. Now here's what will really surprise you. The number one item on today's list, the single most powerful thing you can do to maximize this effect after 50, is something almost nobody is doing. And it has nothing to do with walking faster, walking longer, or taking any kind of supplement. I'll reveal it before the end of this video, and I promise you it will change how you think about every single morning for the rest of your life. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something personal. Leave a comment right now and tell me 2 things. How old you are, and whether you've ever tried walking on an empty stomach before. Did it work? Did it leave you dizzy? Did you give up? I read every single comment on this channel personally, and your experience might end up helping someone else who is watching this video right now. So drop it down below. We have a wonderful community here, and your story matters. Today, I'm counting down 5 powerful strategies ranked from helpful to absolutely life-changing for how to walk on an empty stomach after 50 to specifically target belly fat. We are going from number 5 down to number 1. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 5, getting your fasting window right before you walk. This might sound simple and you might be tempted to skip past it, but please don't, because this is where the majority of people over 50 make their very first mistake, and it costs them everything. Here's the thing. When we talk about walking on an empty stomach, we don't just mean skipping breakfast for an hour. We're talking about something much more specific called the metabolic fasting window. And for people over 50, the science is crystal clear about exactly how long that window needs to be. Research from the Pennington Biomedical Research Center in Louisiana found that adults over the age of 50 need a minimum of 10 to 12 hours of overnight fasting before a morning walk to enter what scientists call the lipolytic state, which is a fancy way of saying the state where your body has fully exhausted its circulating blood sugar and glycogen stores and has no choice but to turn to your stored fat for fuel. Think of it like this. Your body is a furnace. And glycogen, the sugar stored in your muscles and liver, is like newspaper. It burns fast and easy. Stored body fat is like a hardwood log. It burns slow. It burns long, and it gives off tremendous heat. But your body will always reach for the newspaper first. Only when the newspaper is completely gone will it start lighting that hardwood log. The fasting window is simply the time it takes to burn through all the newspaper. Now here's why this is especially critical after 50. As we age, our bodies become significantly better at storing glycogen and significantly slower at depleting it. A study from the Journal of Gerontology found that adults over 55 retain glycogen stores roughly 40% longer than adults in their 30s after a comparable evening meal. That means if a 35-year-old needs 8 hours to deplete their glycogen and enter fat-burning mode, a 55-year-old may need 11 or 12. So if you eat dinner at 7 hours in the evening and wake up at 6 in the morning, that's 11 hours. You're right at the edge. If you had a late snack at 9 or 10 at night, you may not be in fat-burning mode at all when you start walking. A patient of mine, I'll call her Gloria, a 67-year-old retired school teacher from Tucson, Arizona, had been walking every single morning for 3 years without losing a single inch around her waist. She was frustrated, nearly ready to give up, convinced her body was simply broken. When I looked at her routine, the problem was immediately obvious. She was having a small bowl of cereal around 9 at night while watching television, then walking at 6:30 in the morning. That was only 9 and 1/2 hours of fasting. She was walking through all that effort entirely on glycogen fuel. We shifted her last meal to 6:30 in the evening, kept everything else identical, and within 6 weeks she had lost 4 and 1/2 in from her waistline. Same walk, same body, different fasting window. So the practical guidance here is simple. Aim for 11 to 13 hours between your last bite of food in the evening and the start of your morning walk. Set a gentle kitchen cutoff time for yourself and stick to it. Water, black coffee, and plain green tea are all acceptable during this window. They will not break your fast. And if you've been having evening snacks, this one shift alone may be the most powerful thing you do all year. Moving on to number 4, the specific walking pace that forces fat burning in aging metabolisms. Here is where the conventional wisdom gets truly dangerous for people over 50. And I want you to pay very close attention. Most fitness advice will tell you to walk faster, push yourself harder, get your heart rate up. And while intensity has its place when it comes to fasted walking, specifically walking on an empty stomach for the purpose of burning stored belly fat, going too fast actually shuts down the fat burning process entirely, and going too slow doesn't activate it properly either. There is a very specific sweet spot, and the science behind it is remarkable. Scientists at the University of Copenhagen published research showing that fat oxidation, meaning the actual burning of stored body fat, peaks at approximately 65% of your maximum aerobic capacity. Not 80%, not 90%, 65%. At higher intensities, your body shifts away from fat as a fuel source and moves back toward burning sugar. Because fat simply cannot be broken down and converted to energy fast enough to keep up with high-intensity demand. Your body is incredibly pragmatic. It will always choose the fastest available fuel source. When you push hard, it needs rapid energy and fat is too slow. So it reaches for sugar, which means it stops burning the belly fat you're trying to eliminate. Now this matters even more profoundly after 50 because of something called mitochondrial aging. Mitochondria are the tiny power plants inside every cell in your body responsible for converting fat into usable energy. Research from Harvard Medical School has shown that by age 60, the average person has experienced a 35 to 40% decline in mitochondrial function compared to their younger years. Think of your mitochondria like furnaces in a factory. When you were 30, you had hundreds of powerful, efficient furnaces running at full capacity. By 60, many of them are older, slower, and less efficient. At high walking intensities, these aging furnaces simply cannot process fat fast enough. So the body bypasses them entirely and burns sugar instead. But at moderate steady intensity, that 65% zone, even older mitochondria can keep up and fat burning proceeds efficiently. So what does 65% feel like? In practical terms, it feels like a brisk, purposeful walk where you are breathing noticeably, but can still hold a conversation. You should be able to speak in full sentences, but you shouldn't be able to sing comfortably. Exercise physiologists call this the talk test, and it's remarkably accurate. If you can belt out a song, you're too slow. If you're gasping between words, you're too fast. That comfortable, slightly breathless, conversational pace is exactly where you want to live for your entire fasted walk. Aim for 20 to 35 minutes at this pace. Research from the American College of Sports Medicine found that beyond 35 to 40 minutes of fasted walking, the body begins producing elevated levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, which actually signals the body to begin breaking down muscle tissue for fuel rather than fat. And after 50, preserving every ounce of muscle you have is absolutely critical because of a condition called sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, which begins accelerating rapidly after age 60 and can rob you of up to 8% of your muscle mass per decade if you're not actively working against it. So more is not better. The sweet spot is 20 to 35 minutes of brisk conversational pace walking on an empty stomach. That is your prescription. The synergy tip for this item: pair this walk with natural morning light exposure. Walking outside in the early morning light, even on a cloudy day, activates your circadian rhythm in a way that has been shown by researchers at Stanford to enhance fatty acid release by an additional 22%. The morning light signals to your brain that it is time to be awake and active, which in turn signals your adrenal glands to release a gentle pulse of epinephrine that literally unlocks your fat cells and makes them more available for burning. So go outside, not on a treadmill, outside. And this leads us perfectly into number 3. Which is where things start to get truly extraordinary. But before I get there, if you're finding this valuable and I genuinely believe what we're covering today could transform your health, please take 2 seconds right now to hit the like button below this video. It tells the algorithm that this information matters and helps us reach more seniors who are desperately looking for real science-backed guidance. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss what we share here. We are building something special together on this channel, and I am so grateful you're here. Number 3, strategic hydration before and during your fasted walk. I know what you're thinking. Water. He's going to talk about water. Stay with me because what the research reveals about hydration and fat metabolism in aging bodies is something that completely blindsided me when I first read it, and I've been sharing it with patients ever since. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that drinking 16 to 17 ounces of cold water, roughly 2 standard glasses, approximately 30 minutes before beginning a fasted walk, increased metabolic rate by 30% for the following 60 minutes, 30% from water. The mechanism is fascinating. Cold water requires your body to warm it to core body temperature, which requires energy expenditure. But more importantly, the volume of water stretches the stomach slightly, which triggers the release of norepinephrine and a fat-mobilizing hormone through the sympathetic nervous system. It essentially gives your fat cells a wake-up call before you even take your first step. Now, after 50, this matters for a second critical reason. Aging dramatically impairs our sense of thirst. Research from the National Institute on Aging has shown that by age 65, the physiological thirst mechanism becomes up to 50% less sensitive than it was in younger years. This means that millions of older adults are chronically mildly dehydrated without ever feeling thirsty. And even mild dehydration of just 1 to 2% of body weight reduces fat oxidation by approximately 22%, according to research from the University of Utah. Your fat-burning machinery literally seizes up when you're dehydrated, much like an engine running without oil. There's more. Adding a small pinch, and I mean genuinely just a pinch, of high-quality sea salt or Himalayan pink salt to your pre-walk water provides electrolytes that support cellular energy production and help transport fatty acids into the mitochondria for burning. The sodium acts like a key that opens the door to the mitochondria, allowing fat molecules to pass through and be converted into energy. Without adequate sodium and potassium, this transport process slows significantly and fat accumulates rather than burns. My patient Robert, a 71-year-old former engineer from Portland, Oregon, had struggled with energy on his morning walks for years. He would start off fine, but feel a strange heaviness and fatigue by the 10-minute mark. He had actually cut back his walks because of it. When we tested his morning hydration habits, he was drinking nothing before his walk and had been avoiding salt entirely because of old advice he had received about blood pressure. We introduced the pre-walk hydration protocol, 16:0 of slightly cool water with a small pinch of sea salt 30 minutes before walking. And within 2 weeks, he reported that the heaviness and fatigue had completely disappeared. He extended his walks from 12 minutes to 28 minutes. And over the following 3 months, he lost 9 lbs of fat, most of it from his abdominal region. The synergy tip here is to add a thin slice of fresh ginger to your pre-walk water if possible. A study from Columbia University found that gingerol, the active compound in ginger, enhances thermogenesis and fat mobilization, adding an additional metabolic boost that complements the hydration effect beautifully. It also supports healthy gut motility, which means your body processes and eliminates waste more efficiently throughout the day. Now, we arrive at number 2, and this is the one that surprises almost every patient I share it with. The power of what you do in the 5 minutes immediately before your walk begins. Number 2, the pre-walk activation sequence that unlocks fat cells before your first step. What if I told you that spending just 5 minutes doing a specific sequence of gentle movements before your fasted walk could increase the amount of fat you burn during that walk by up to 40%? That is not an exaggeration. It is backed by a specific physiological mechanism that most people over 50 have never heard of. And once you understand it, you will never skip this again. Here's the science. Stored body fat, particularly visceral belly fat, is not equally accessible throughout the day. Fat is stored in fat cells called adipocytes. And in order for that fat to be burned, it must first be released from the fat cell, travel through the bloodstream, be transported into a muscle cell, and then pass into the mitochondria for conversion into energy. This entire process is regulated by a hormone called hormone-sensitive lipase, or HSL. Think of HSL like a tiny key that unlocks your fat cells and lets the fat out. Without adequate HSL activity, your fat cells remain locked. And even if you walk for an hour on a completely empty stomach, the fat can't get out efficiently enough to make a significant difference. Research from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that gentle dynamic movement, specifically light joint rotations, slow leg swings, and gentle trunk twists performed for 4 to 6 minutes, triggers a rapid spike in HSL activity that persists for the first 25 to 30 minutes of subsequent exercise. In other words, the gentle movements serve as a biological ignition sequence that unlocks your fat cells just before you begin walking. The study found this pre-activation sequence increased fat oxidation during the subsequent walk by 38 to 42% compared to walking that began without it. And this effect was substantially more pronounced in adults over the age of 55 compared to younger adults, precisely because older fat cells have a higher activation threshold. They need a stronger signal to open. After 60, there's an additional factor at play called adrenergic receptor sensitivity. Your fat cells are covered in tiny receivers called beta-adrenergic receptors, and they receive the signal from adrenaline and norepinephrine that tells them to release fat. Research from Duke University Medical Center has shown that by age 65, beta-adrenergic receptor sensitivity in fat cells declines by up to 45%. Meaning the same hormonal signal that easily unlocked fat cells at age 35 is now only halfway effective. The pre-walk activation sequence essentially compensates for this decline by amplifying the initial hormonal signal through physical stimulation of the nervous system. The practical sequence takes exactly 5 minutes and requires no equipment. Begin with 30 seconds of slow, gentle neck rolls. Move into 1 minute of shoulder circles, alternating forward and backward. Then spend 90 seconds on hip circles, hands on hips, rotating slowly and deliberately in each direction. Follow with 1 minute of standing knee raises, lifting each knee gently toward your chest in a slow, controlled rhythm. Finish with 1 minute of gentle trunk twists, standing upright, arms slightly extended, rotating slowly from side to side. That's it, 5 minutes. And then you begin your walk immediately while the HSL activation is at its peak. The synergy tip here is timing. Do the sequence outdoors, not indoors. The transition from the slightly cooler outdoor air to physical movement creates an additional thermogenic response, meaning your body generates heat, which further amplifies the fat-mobilizing hormonal cascade. If you live somewhere cold, this effect is even more pronounced. And now we have arrived. Number 1, the single most powerful thing you can do after 50 to transform your fasted morning walk into a belly fat-destroying metabolic event. And I promised you it would surprise you. I believe it will. Number 1, strategic protein timing in the 30-minute window immediately after your fasted walk. Here is the great irony of fasted walking that almost nobody talks about. The walk itself is only half the equation. What you do, or more precisely, what you eat in the 30 minutes after your walk determines whether the fat-burning effect you just created becomes permanent physiological change, or whether it simply fades away and your body compensates by breaking down muscle tissue instead. And for people over 50, this post-walk window is arguably more important than the walk itself. Let me explain why. During a fasted walk, your body is doing 2 things simultaneously. It is burning stored fat for fuel. Wonderful. But it is also entering a state of mild catabolic stress, meaning it is beginning to break down protein from your muscles to use as supplemental fuel. This is called the anabolic resistance paradox, and it becomes dramatically more severe with age. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that adults over the age of 65 experience muscle protein breakdown during fasted exercise at a rate approximately 60% higher than adults in their 40s performing the same exercise. That means that without the right nutritional response, immediately after your fasted walk, you may be burning some belly fat, but you are simultaneously destroying a significant amount of the muscle that keeps your metabolism high, your bones strong, and your body functional. Here's what makes this even more critical. Muscle tissue is your primary metabolic engine. Every pound of muscle you carry burns approximately 6 calories per day at complete rest, whereas a pound of fat burns only 2. Muscle is 3 times more metabolically active than fat. When you lose muscle through aging, through undereating, through inadequate protein, your resting metabolic rate drops and your body becomes dramatically more efficient at storing belly fat. Research from Tufts University found that adults who lost just 5 lbs of muscle over a 5-year period experienced an average increase of 11 lbs of body fat over the same period. Even without any change in their diet, they weren't eating more. They simply had less muscle to burn calories. So, the solution, and this is what the science makes unambiguous, is to consume a specific type of protein within 30 minutes of completing your fasted walk. Not just any protein. The research points specifically to leucine-rich proteins because leucine is the amino acid that directly activates a cellular pathway called mTORC1, which is the master switch for muscle protein synthesis. Think of leucine like a spark plug in your car engine. Without it, the engine won't fire no matter how much fuel you have. With it, the engine roars to life and begins rebuilding muscle immediately after your walk. The best natural sources of leucine for this post-walk window are eggs, specifically whole eggs, including the yolk, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and whey protein. A study from McMaster University in Hamilton, Canada, found that consuming 25 to 40 grams of high-quality protein within 30 minutes of fasted exercise in adults over 55 not only completely halted muscle protein breakdown, but actually triggered net muscle protein synthesis, meaning muscle building, while simultaneously maintaining elevated fat oxidation for up to 4 additional hours after the walk was completed. 4 additional hours of fat burning triggered by eating the right protein at the right time. For practical guidance, aim for 30 grams of protein immediately after your walk. 3 large whole eggs provide approximately 19 grams. Adding half a cup of Greek yogurt brings you to roughly 29 to 32 GA depending on the brand. If you prefer a simpler option, a high-quality whey protein shake with water, not milk, provides a very rapidly absorbed leucine source that is ideal for this window. Avoid plant proteins in this specific window if possible, as research from the University of Texas Medical Branch found that plant protein sources trigger mTOR1 activation at roughly 40% the efficiency of animal-based proteins due to their lower leucine density and lower digestibility scores. The synergy tip here, and this one is genuinely powerful, is to add a small amount of omega-3 fatty acids to your post-walk meal. Research from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland found that combining omega-3 fatty acids with leucine-rich protein amplified muscle protein synthesis by an additional 35% in adults over 60 compared to protein alone. A few walnuts, a small amount of smoked salmon, or simply a fish oil capsule taken with your post-walk meal can make a meaningful difference in how effectively your body rebuilds and protects muscle after every single walk. And more muscle means a higher resting metabolic rate, which means more belly fat burned every single hour of every single day, even while you sleep. I had a patient, a remarkable woman named Helen, 74 years old, from a small town outside of Nashville, Tennessee, who came to me after her doctor had told her that her belly fat was essentially permanent at her age, that her metabolism was simply too slow to change, and that she should focus on managing her health conditions rather than trying to lose weight. Helen was devastated. She had always been active, had always cared about her health, and to be told at 74 that it was essentially over for her body, it broke something in her spirit. We started her on a protocol that combined everything I've shared with you today. The correct fasting window, the brisk conversational pace walk for 25 minutes, the pre-walk hydration, the 5-minute activation sequence, and the 30-gram leucine-rich protein meal within 30 minutes of finishing. Within 4 months, Helen had lost 17 lbs, 11 of which were from her abdominal region. Her blood sugar dropped from pre-diabetic levels to completely normal. Her doctor, the same one who told her it was over, called her results remarkable. Helen called me and said, "I feel like I got my life back." She is 74 years old. It is never too late. I want you to hear that with every part of yourself. The research does not lie. Your body, regardless of how old you are, regardless of how many years you feel like you may have lost, regardless of what anyone has told you about your metabolism or your age or your limitations, your body retains an extraordinary capacity to burn fat, build muscle, reduce inflammation, and transform itself in ways that will genuinely astonish you. The science we've covered today is not theoretical. It is reproducible. It is real, and it is available to you starting tomorrow morning. You deserve to feel strong. You deserve to walk up a flight of stairs without your heart pounding. You deserve to look in the mirror and recognize the person looking back at you. You deserve to live independently with energy and vitality and joy for as many decades as your heart keeps beating. And the beautiful, profound truth, the truth that fills me with gratitude every single day I get to practice medicine, is that the path to all of that can begin with something as simple and as human as putting on your shoes and taking a walk in the morning air. All scientific references cited in this video are linked in the description below. If you have a specific health condition, please speak with your physician before making changes to your exercise or nutrition routine. This video is educational in nature and intended to provide you with the most current evidence-based information available. Now here's what I want you to do right now. First, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Click that button and ring the bell because every week we bring you exactly this kind of science-backed, practical, senior-focused health information that you simply will not find anywhere else. And second, leave me a comment below. Tell me your age and tell me, are you going to try the fasted walk protocol starting tomorrow morning? Or maybe you're already doing it and you have a story to share. I genuinely want to know. I read every comment. This community that we are building together, seniors supporting seniors, science supporting hope, that is why I do this work. And I am honored, truly honored that you spent this time with me today. Now go get some rest tonight because tomorrow morning we